Starting on day one of my new administration, we will end inflation and we will make America affordable again because the prices are too high.
In the campaign, the big promise by Donald Trump was that he was going to bring down prices and make America affordable again. And everything he's done is the opposite of that.
In the midst of Trump's tariff tensions, while Canada is moving to strengthen its economy and build on its national advantages, many Americans struggle with higher costs and fading confidence. At stake is the true impact of tariffs. Will they restore U.S. factory jobs, or will they weigh the economy down into recession? President Trump entered office promising to bring prices down and make life affordable. Instead, households are facing higher costs at every corner. Grocery bills show eggs up around 16%, coffee 14%, and beef 11%, according to recent consumer price reports highlighted by critics. Automobiles and hardware are also more expensive, while health insurance renewals are forecast to climb by about 20% as tariffs lift the price of imported medicines. Utility bills are rising too, in part because new renewable projects have been slowed while demand from data centers keeps climbing. The result is a squeeze that millions of families feel daily. Inflation may not be surging at double digits, but the cost of essentials continues to climb. That sets up the first test of tariff policy. Are these measures actually making life better for workers, or are they quietly taxing consumers while missing the promised revival of factory jobs? The evidence suggests that tariffs are poorly matched to the structure of today's economy. Nobel laureate Paul Krugman has emphasized that the real drag on manufacturing jobs has long been automation and productivity, not just trade. Tariffs cannot undo that shift. In fact, higher input costs encourage firms to automate faster. The auto industry shows why. North American production is deeply integrated. A single car's components may cross the US, Canada, and Mexico borders 7 or 8 times before completion. Tariffs on steel and aluminum raise costs at every step. Instead of creating new assembly jobs, firms streamline processes and cut labor needs. Moreover, tariffs often fall on inputs rather than finished goods. That squeezes domestic manufacturers who rely on global supply chains. Companies that rushed imports before tariffs took effect have now exhausted inventories. As new orders arrive, costs climb, and businesses can no longer absorb the difference. Consumers pay more, while factories see little incentive to expand hiring. The second test is growth. Tariffs work like a selective sales tax. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that recent tariff rounds add about 0.4 of a percentage point to inflation in 2025 and 2026 while reducing GDP and real income. The International Monetary Fund places the effective U.S. tariff rate this year above 17%, warning that it heightens risks of slower growth. Uncertainty makes the damage worse. Businesses cannot plan capital spending if tariff rates shift unpredictably from one month to the next. That climate discourages investment and hiring. Export industries face retaliation abroad, cutting orders and reducing utilization in factories at home. The Federal Reserve faces a dilemma: tolerate higher prices for longer or tighten policy and risk choking demand. Either path weighs on economic momentum. Across the border, Canada is responding to the same global shocks in a different way. Prime Minister Mark Carney has launched a Build Canada agenda that fast-tracks major energy and infrastructure projects. LNG Canada has shipped its first cargo from Kitimat. Nickel output reached 190,000 tons in 2024, nearly half of U.S. imports, positioning Canada as a critical supplier for electric vehicles and chips. Offshore wind projects in Nova Scotia are set to attract tens of billions in investment and provide clean power for export to New England. The contrast is striking. In the United States, tariffs raise costs and cloud the outlook for jobs and growth. In Canada, the crisis has become a catalyst for investment and long-term capacity. Tariffs may shift trade flows, but they cannot reverse automation or restore yesterday's factory payrolls. Competitiveness now depends on cost, certainty, and the ability to build. Canada is moving forward on that front, while America struggles with the unintended consequences of tariff policy.
All right, now postal services worldwide are halting shipments to the United States.
An executive order signed by President Trump last month, goods coming in from abroad less than $800 will be slapped with country-specific tariff rates starting Friday.
It started with a single executive order. President Donald Trump abolished the de minimis exemption, the rule that had allowed parcels worth under $800 to enter the United States duty-free. By Friday, that exemption was gone. The impact was immediate. Postal services in Australia, India, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and across Europe suspended shipments to the United States. And the shock was felt in North America as well.
Now, as if Donald Trump's tariffs aren't inflicting enough pain, now Canadians running a small business are bracing for higher costs as the U.S. ends the exclusion from shipping fees.
Canada, America's closest trading partner, saw small businesses scrambling to keep sales flowing south of the border. Millions of parcels cross between the two countries each year, and the removal of this rule struck at the core of cross-border commerce. What was meant to protect America was in fact disrupting the continent's own supply chains.
The White House said the change was needed to protect American industries and block dangerous goods like fentanyl. But the first and hardest blow fell on American consumers and retailers.
The vast majority of my customer base is in the US. I can't pass this on to my customers. So as of last night, I've had to close my store completely.
Online sellers who rely on imports suddenly faced suspended shipments. Small shops that stocked foreign products prepared to raise prices or close their doors. For households, the costs arrive almost overnight. New duties are tied to country-specific rates ranging from 10 to 50%. NBC News reported they translate into flat fees of about $80 per item for countries with lower rates, $160 for mid-range, and $200 for the highest brackets. Analysts warned these changes could add up to $13 billion in extra consumer costs. Logistics firms also pulled back. DHL, one of the world's largest couriers, said it would stop accepting parcels bound for the United States until key details were clarified. Instead of securing America, the policy created delays, higher prices, and confusion at home.
While many countries froze shipments altogether, Canada chose a different approach. Canada Post confirmed it would not suspend service. Instead, it introduced a system to collect the new duties and transfer them to U.S. Customs. For Canadian parcels, most are now subject to a 35% tariff, reflecting the non-CUSMA rate set earlier in August. It is costly, but it preserves access to the market. This stood in sharp contrast with other partners. In Australia, small exporters halted sales to the United States because they could not guarantee what fees customers would face. In Europe, postal agencies admitted they needed more time and paused deliveries until new systems were built. Canada, by contrast, kept goods flowing. In the face of Trump's abrupt policy, Ottawa ensured businesses still had a path into their largest export destination. The contrast is clear. Trump's decision was supposed to protect the United States, but it left American families and small shops paying more while major couriers suspended service. Canada, facing the same disruption, adapted quickly. By maintaining its postal link, it preserved market share while competitors in Europe and Asia were locked out. This is more than a technical fix. It reinforces Canada's role as a stable partner in North America. Prime Minister Mark Carney has argued that Canada will only sign agreements that serve its interests. That stance is reflected here. While others cut connections, Canada proved it could keep commerce moving under new rules. For the United States, the question is whether these tariffs strengthen or weaken the economy they were meant to defend. For Canada, the lesson is sharper. In the midst of global confusion, it found a way to turn crisis into opportunity, showing that resilience and pragmatism can be its greatest advantage.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is in Europe tonight, hoping to build trade and defense cooperation with key allies. Canada has pivoted across the pond as tensions simmer with our southern neighbor.
The relationship between the United States and Canada has rarely felt so unsettled. President Donald Trump has used tariffs as his favorite instrument of pressure, reshaping the way America interacts with its closest neighbors. In Washington, the tone has been sharp, focused on extracting concessions through surprise measures and tough rhetoric. North of the border, Prime Minister Mark Carney has taken a different path. Rather than respond with fire against fire, he is building a strategy centered on patience, alliances, and long-term leverage. The question facing both countries is not just about tariffs today. It is about whether Canada can hold its ground while reshaping its future beyond America's shadow.
Prime Minister Carney announcing yesterday that Canada will be dropping some countermeasures on American goods.
In terms of the strategy here, it's probably a smart play for Canada to really underscore the importance and the value of CUSMA.
Carney's most recent move was to scale back many of Canada's retaliatory tariffs on American goods. The change will be visible on supermarket shelves, where Canadian families may see lower prices on everyday products like fruit juice and food staples. Canadian manufacturers that rely on U.S. components will also feel some relief. On the surface, this might look like a concession, but in reality, it is a deliberate gesture designed to highlight the value of the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. Roughly 85 to 90% of Canadian exports to the United States already travel tariff-free under that pact. By removing countermeasures on CUSMA-covered goods, Carney is showing that Canada respects the deal and expects Washington to do the same.
So as we work to address outstanding trade issues with the United States, it's important, it's vital. We do everything we can to preserve this unique advantage for Canadian workers, Canadian businesses.
The real sticking points remain in metals and autos. The United States continues to apply tariffs of up to 50% on steel, aluminum, and copper, citing national security provisions. Canada has kept some retaliatory measures in place on those products. This mix of relief and resistance is intentional. It demonstrates goodwill without abandoning leverage, and it signals that Canada is ready to negotiate seriously on the areas that matter most. Instead of bending, Carney is pacing the talks and ensuring that Canada sets terms of engagement rather than reacting blindly to every move from Washington.
As the trade war with the United States continues, Carney has been focused on diversifying trade, especially with Europe. Canada's energy and critical minerals are top of the pitch list.
Carney's approach is not limited to North America. While discussions with the Trump administration continue, he has crossed the Atlantic to strengthen ties with Europe. His itinerary includes meetings with leaders in Germany, Poland, and Latvia, alongside sessions with major business executives. Canada's pitch is clear. It can be a reliable supplier of energy and critical minerals at a time when European governments are anxious about secure supply chains. This European push comes at a sensitive moment. The European Union only recently accepted a tariff framework with the United States that set a 15% baseline on many goods, while higher duties remained on steel and aluminum. Canada is watching that experience closely. By stepping in with offers of energy, minerals, and defense cooperation, Ottawa is positioning itself as an attractive partner, just as Europe seeks alternatives to U.S. pressure. The presence of Canadian troops in Poland and Latvia under Operation Reassurance also reinforces Canada's credibility as both a security and economic partner. What might look like a simple trade mission is in fact a statement of independence. Canada is diversifying its options and making clear that it will not be cornered. The contrast between Washington and Ottawa is clear. Trump thrives on confrontation, using tariffs to unsettle allies. His method creates urgency and seeks fast concessions. Carney is shaping a slower game. He lowers costs at home, keeps leverage, and builds partnerships abroad. The strategy may not grab headlines like Trump's moves, but it builds resilience. For Canada, this is not about bowing to American power. It is about proving that a middle power with the right resources and alliances can withstand turbulence and turn it into strength. The coming months will test both leaders. Trump will push through tariffs and deadlines. Carney will counter with alliances and economic cards. Canada is not reacting anymore. It is standing tall, steering its own path, and reminding the world its choices matter.